For leader Rusty Wallace, his hopes for winning come to an abrupt end when Mark Martin attempts to pass him for the lead. But the two cars touch and Wallace hits the wall. He slides down the front stretch where he collects Jimmy Hensley. As Wallace's Pontiac comes to rest, Jeff Bodine's out-of-control Ford slides in and rocks Wallace again hard on the driver's side. Rusty would be all right. Dale Earnhardt, down 2 laps at one point, fights his way back up to the front and passes Martin with just over 60 laps to go. In the closing moments, he holds off a charging Dale Jarrett to take his second win in a row and third of the season.
You know, Goodyear had a good tire here. We just worked it awful hard. It was a real fast pace, and you know, we was running as fast at the end of the race as we were at the first. So we worked the car awful hard, and we got a lap or so down there on tire, you know, with a flat tire, and we had to work hard all day long. And Richard and Andy and all the guys in the engine department, they put a good race car under us. Real consistent car today, and that's why we got our laps back and was able to come back and win that race.
Dover had taken its toll on the cars and drivers, so the following week the teams were hoping for a kinder, gentler race at Pocono International Raceway. Unfortunately, that wish would not come true. On the 4th lap of the 500-mile race, Rusty Wallace heads to the garage with a blown engine.
We put a new engine in this morning. Everything went well. The car was running real good the first 4 or 5 laps there, and just locked up. I mean, it really locked up, too. I just shoved the clutch in and just saved it. So that's it. That's all I know.
As Rusty searches for the cause of his misfortunes, the door is left open for Dale Earnhardt to capitalize. Each time Dale crosses the start-finish line, he pads his lead in the Driver Points Championship. But that would be the only good news for Dale and the entire Richard Childress team on this day, because slowly but surely, Dale's car develops an oil leak and takes him out of contention. Engine problems would spoil the chances for other drivers, like Ernie Irvin, Mark Martin, and Jeff Bodine. On the other hand, Kyle Petty's Pontiac is out for a Sunday afternoon drive, leading 148 of 200 laps. Kyle cruises to his first win of the season.
It was tough, because it was tough when you run like that to keep that pace, to keep that running what you want to run, to keep the car doing what you want it to do. You know, and you're bad about going to sleep, and I was out there and I about half went to sleep because it got a little cloudy, the car got a little tighter, and I was just living with it. And I said, well, shoot, you know, I'm out this far out in front. Finally, I looked in the mirror and saw Harry coming. We had to make an adjustment, and when we made that adjustment, it turned the car loose again, and we took off, you know. So that's one of those deals. It can be an easy day, but it was a tougher day today.
It is Saturday at Michigan International Speedway. Members of the Jack Roush race team frantically pound out the damage to Mark Martin's car following a practice crash. Even with the damage, Martin and Roush believe the car is one of the strongest in the field. On Sunday, they proved to everyone that it really was. Shortly after the start of the Miller Genuine Draft 400, Martin builds a commanding lead, and like Kyle Petty the week before, appears to have this one in the bag. But races at Michigan are known to be won on fuel economy. In the final 50 laps of the 200-lap race, Martin is leading on borrowed time. Needing fuel, Martin hopes the yellow flag will show itself soon so he can bring his car in for gas and stay in the lead. But unfortunately, with 9 laps to go, his Ford runs out of fuel and he has to pull into the pits for a brief gas and go. With Martin out of the picture, Ricky Rudd, who had been driving his Chevrolet with less horsepower to get better fuel mileage, takes the lead. Better gas mileage also helps Jeff Gordon move up to second place, while Ricky Rudd's crew chief, Gary Dehart, can't believe it as his car takes the checkered flag, proving that the fastest car doesn't always win. The win for Rudd comes on the very weekend of his announcement that he'll be forming his own team for the 1994 season. Well, a tip of the hat to Gary Dehart, Ricky Rudd, and the boys. Some great fuel consumption numbers. They ended up in victory lane to wrap up the first half of the season. It's amazing to think in just a very few short days, everybody's going to be right back here at Daytona heading towards this start-finish line for the Pepsi 400. A look at the top 10 shows that Dale Earnhardt, with 3 wins and 3 second-place finishes, puts him in the lead in the Winston Cup Driver Point Championship with 2,157. Dale Jarrett, with his win here at Daytona, and 7 top 5 finishes is 213 points behind Earnhardt. Rusty Wallace, with 4 wins and 4 top 5s, manages to hang in 3rd spot. And perhaps the biggest stat for Rusty, 5 of those races he did not even finish. A look at 6th through 10th shows one surprise, rookie Jeff Gordon in 10th spot. With 4 top 5 finishes, Gordon looks to be the front runner for Rookie of the Year honors. Next up on the schedule, the Pepsi 400 here at Daytona. Sure, there's plenty of time for the drivers to make up a lot of ground and improve their ranking in the standings, but the stakes are getting a bit higher as well. You've got to deal now with the summertime heat, and you've also got to deal with that man named Earnhardt. Only one word could describe the conditions of this July 4th weekend at Daytona: hot. With temperatures in the upper 90s, drivers had to find a way to beat the heat. Ken Schrader, he was especially hot. His pole-winning run was disallowed after NASCAR officials ruled that the carburetor in his car didn't meet NASCAR specifications. Schrader will have to start the race in 41st position. Ernie Irvan takes the green flag. As Irvan leads the field around, there is trouble in turn 1. Jimmy Hensley's Ford breaks loose and hits the wall. Take a look from Jeff Bodine's perspective as Jimmy Spencer in the yellow car suddenly collides with Hut Strickland. Bodine avoids disaster by keeping his line and driving straight through the accident. Kyle Petty and Bobby Labonte didn't have Bodine's luck as they get collected in the accident. Damage to Kyle's car causes him to breathe exhaust fumes, which later forces him to retire from the race. If Dale Earnhardt had any discomfort, it was in trying to make up a 9-second deficit to leader Sterling Marlin. Following a caution flag, Dale is able to catch Sterling and take the lead. But as was the case in February, Dale would be tested once again in the race's final lap. On the backstretch, Earnhardt, with Ken Schrader right behind, gets a little loose. Marlin makes a run to the inside. Earnhardt counters and blocks him out. That move would give Earnhardt enough cushion to stay in front and capture his 3rd win of the season. From the established speedway of Daytona, the NASCAR Winston Cup teams headed to the newest track on the racing schedule, New Hampshire International Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire. New England race fans had been waiting a long time for this day to arrive, and they would not be disappointed. Early on, Jeff Burton gets loose in turn 2 and spins, taking Ken Schrader with him. Everyone else uses the wide New Hampshire turns to avoid trouble. One driver who managed to turn his early troubles around was Rusty Wallace. Qualifying 33rd for the race, Rusty and the Penske crew had their work cut out for them. But as they have done so many times this season, Rusty's pit crew made this race one to remember.
Before the first caution flag came out, I passed 21 cars on the racetrack. The car was that strong. And when we made the first pit stop, they took me from, I believe, 11th position to 1st. I took the lead in 100 laps and led everything from there on out. And the crew was so fast that day, and track position meant so much, and we had such a poor pit draw that those guys were absolutely on fire. And I made that first pit stop, and I won the inaugural race up there, and it was a real big deal.
Davey Allison finished the race in 3rd place. It was to be his last race. Just 24 hours after the event in New Hampshire, Allison was attempting to land his helicopter in the infield of the Talladega Superspeedway in Alabama. The helicopter spun out of control and crashed. Davey and his passenger, family friend, racing veteran Red Farmer, were medevaced to a Birmingham, Alabama hospital. Family and friends of both men arrived at the hospital to await the news on their condition. Both men were critical. Although Red Farmer's injuries were not as extensive, an all-night vigil was held for both he and Davey. But by morning, the news had come.
Mr. Allison, 32 of Hueytown, Alabama, injured in a private helicopter crash yesterday at Talladega Superspeedway. Died this morning at Caraway Methodist Medical Center.
For the second time in 4 months, the stock car racing world mourned the loss of one of its brightest stars.
We appreciate the press and all the fans and the people around the country. It's been tough.
On the racetrack as well as off, what you saw out of Davey Allison was 110% commitment. In 1987, he trumpeted his arrival into Winston Cup racing by sitting